VenomousStare back with another 2v2 cast. This time we're going to have an exciting game between the red team, Lucky, and V. Probably just going to refer to V as the red Protoss to avoid any obnoxious confusion. His ally is of the clan 4-Leaf. The clan logo is actually loaded in this game, so it's just a picture of a ghost, nothing special. Player's name, Lucky. Savagewood down here in the bottom middle, the protagonist, Savagewood Protoss. He says cheesin' in all caps. His ally is going to be Spawn of the Lar clan. Two Protoss players. So one thing to note is that whenever you click on someone, you can see their hotkey setup in a replay. Anytime you watch a replay, you want to do this. When you click on someone, just note their hotkey setup. It's sort of interesting. A lot of people play on barcodes these days and whatnot. This is my hotkey setup, your standard main building on 4, gateway on 5, nothing special as of yet, probe on 3. I don't really cherry pick these games if a cool one happens. Yeah, I'll maybe change the name of that replay, but I don't only pick games, and then I'm not going to make up a bunch of hotkeys that I don't normally use and show them off in this example, I guess. This is just what I was using at the time. If I wanted to be cute, I could put another probe that maybe, if I were to scout with a probe, I would put it on 8 or 9. The red Protoss, making a cyber core, of course. Savage Woods is at about the same time. But the red Protoss has made a pylon out here. A lot of times we see proxy stargates used with shield batteries, and the void rays will come in and harass. But we're going to see a robo here. The robo, of course, allows you to build a warp prism. Warp prism rushes have been very popular and common because of how powerful the warp prism has become. The warp prism, of course, is regarded as an essential unit. A lot of Protoss players underestimated that in the past, but with the warp prism pickup range so large, we see aggressive strategies like this have become more powerful, and they were always more popular in 2v2 than they were in 1v1. Robo coming down here for Savagewood. Now with the nerf of the warp gate, making warp gates that were sort of nerfed severely in the fact that if there was a pylon out on the map, it took just 4 seconds to warp in the past, now it takes 8, so you have to hide a gateway out there. A lot of players don't like doing this because it makes hiding pylons more costly and more difficult. And the warp prism, of course, people figured out that it was so good for harassing, so they started using it more. Having a warp prism just out by your opponent's main can be extremely powerful whenever they move out, especially if you have a slow-moving Zerg army in the late game. You always want to have a warp prism by their base to stab them in the back. I know a lot of this stuff isn't rocket science, but I like to point out some of the more obvious things to our newer players. Warp prism coming out here for Savagewood, but the rush is starting to occur for the red Protoss, and Spawn sees this because of his oracle. He just poked out and ran into it. Proxy Immortal drop is going to be the play. V is going to try to take out this pylon right here that powers the Stargate. Spawn, of course, wants to get as many of these Stargate units as possible because it counters the proxy Immortal play. Immortals can't shoot up, and the Warp Prism has trouble defending itself when you're doing a drop with something that can't shoot up. Spawn does have another pylon down. The red Protoss is really just on one base. Nice to see him mixing his shield battery. You always want to do this. This is essential since they got rid of the mothership core. Void Ray out here. And this is just going to be a tug-of-war in the early game. A Savagewood is actually going to commence his cheese over here. And it's going to be a sentry drop, and the drones are going to be pulled. The sentry does die. Savagewood should have picked this up sooner, done a little bit of hot pickup. He's going to start doing that here. He wants to keep the force field on the ramp. Doesn't want any sort of exchange to occur. Most of the lings have died, and he's just going to do extended hot pickup micro. The warp prism does get low, so he's just going to run it away for now. And we're going to go back to this base as the Stargate has died. A couple batteries up here for spawn. There are 30 drones for the Zerg, so he did lose a little bit there, but with this hidden base alive and kicking, he's not in too bad a shape. Savagewood did delay his natural, and Spawn really hasn't been able to mine from his because of this cheese. An expert player would have probably been able to squeeze double probes out while this was going on. I mean, considering he hasn't held it, and he just had one gate. Or has one gate, rather. Second Stargate coming out here. He probably wants to build a couple more of those if he wants to be able to hold this rush single-handedly. Savagewood can't really take on the shield battery rush, so he's just going to try to attack the one basing red Protoss here with a couple of Adept plus Sentry. I can't really end that sentence with the plural words, sorry about that. Stalkers and Immortals coming in here. Void Ray is trying to defend with the help of the shield battery, both of which are empty. Third one going up. The Oracle finally is turned on and comes in. The red Protoss player was stunted relatively there. He's going to finally do some more warp-ins here. Savagewood bought his ally a little bit of time, not a whole lot there. And Spawn finally throws up a question mark, says, okay, what the hell? You know, you did attack a couple times, but you're not exactly helping me. Savagewood, okay, complies. It's okay, at least. Sentry gonna warp in more shield batteries on the high ground. I mean, some of this stuff is just so classic Protoss, and I'm not saying that in a pejorative or mean way towards Protoss players, but I love seeing goofy stuff like that. Like, okay, I'll warp in the warp prism into phase mode and build shield batteries in your face. It's like very 2v2, very grimy, and I'm gonna do this rush. Well, I've done this before. Shield batteries are really good, so I'll take some on the high ground too. Savagewood is clearing out this bottom proxy, but the shield batteries will be able to hold off part of the rush for the red Protoss. Hydras are massing in the base of the red Zerg. The red Protoss is being pushed back by the Void Rays here. Savagewood cleans up the tremendous proxy from his opponent, who built nearly every structure he made in the game out of his base. And Savagewood does not have Blink. He's going to try to execute some Bulldog slash Bulldog hot pickup micro here. Let's see what happens though. Is beautifully the warp prism goes into phasing mode to power the batteries. And this is smart. Shield batteries are really good if you're doing a cheese or a prolonged attack. Throw a couple down, see if you can get them up. And I mean that in a serious fashion, especially in 2v2 when your ally can come over and also screw with the same player. And stuff that wouldn't really work as much in 1v1 can work in 2v2. Like just doing warp prism harass and mixing in a shield battery in a cheese situation on the high ground. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just sort of funny, I think, though. Hydraling being pumped out here for the red Zerg Lucky. Looks like he's going to go Lurkers, although he's supply blocked. This hidden base is alive and kicking. Let's go to the vision. Not that vision, the other vision. It's a 50-50 shot, like Ace King versus Double Queen. 50-50 on whether I was going to hit the right hotkey there. Savagewood has made the warp prism that was doing work since the early game stay alive, so that's pretty good micro there. Anytime you can sort of show the battle scars of a prism, that can be very helpful. We do see another robo coming down here for Savagewood as his robotics bay finishes, so perhaps he's going to go into Colossus or Disruptor. He's going to start researching Colossus range, and he's researching +1 as well. Lurkers are coming up for Lucky, whose 1-1 is almost done. 3 Phoenix at a time coming from his ally. And let's look at the creep spread, because there have been a lot of tumors put down, but they haven't been spread particularly well. Also, a lot of players would favor to just keep this base hidden the whole game, which it is the very corner base, so maybe that has some merit to it. But anytime you can start spreading creep from weird places, it's a good thing as a Zerg player. And the main base is killed here for the red Protoss. And these Void Rays have to be careful because a lot of Hydras are coming. They wouldn't want to do anything stupid. Fighting Phoenix sort of in the open air is what you want to aim for, but the Phoenix can kite around especially if the player with the Phoenix gets range. Zerg player needs his 3rd or 4th base really badly, starting to dry up. Void Ray's retreating here for the blue Protoss spawn. So a lot of newer players might be asking, well, how do you counter something like this, like a hidden base? Because it is something that happens quite a bit in the lower leagues and can get you a lot of wins, even in higher level games, is being able to sneak a base. You just want to always be diligent about clicking out a Marine or a Zergling or a Zealot to check for these corner bases. And one of the things I like about 2v2 is there are certain elements of Starcraft that you might not really appreciate, so to speak, as we see a huge Hydraling attack coming out, and your 2v2 partner can really help you improve on those things. If they see that you never really take the tower enough, as we see the Void Rays are going to do in and pull the Hydras back. For instance, you don't take the towers enough or you don't build enough production, your 2v2 partner that you play with consistently can sort of be like your best critic, because he can point out the weaker elements of your game and try to help you, because a lot of times you might be losing games because you get supply blocked too much or you don't make enough production. Very simple stuff that, quite frankly, you want to practice with your 2v2 partner, have a 1v1 game before you play together to try to get a bearing on how each other play. Lucky's going to move out with a big force here. He's researching 2-2. Double Colossus are being pumped for spawn. Savagewood does have one idle robo, although he doesn't really have the minerals to produce anything. He has a Colossus army with some Sentry Immortal thrown in. This is a pretty good army. But this is just an insane amount of Hydralisk to hold. You really need a lot of Colossus. As you see, the first 4 force fields are going to be thrown up from Savagewood. He really needs perfect force fields here to hold off this many Hydras. And he's going to kite back to his battery, and he's going to throw a few more force fields up. Very little overlap. That's actually pretty good. And he's going to mow down all the Hydras, many of which are having trouble getting shots off. He's going to warp in a few more Zealots. Unfortunately, does not have Zealot legs yet, but he will clean up that massive Hydra army. The Phoenix try to come in and clean up the Colossus. They get one, but with warped in Stalker, Savagewood will be able to repel the Phoenix. And Spawn, his ally, is also going Colossus, came in there at the last second. Savagewood has an observer out here, so he does have a beat on what's going on. I can't stress enough how important this is, and basically how cheap this is just to get free wins. You always want to have an observer at your opponent's ramp to see when they move out, especially in 2v2 where you either share a base, so you only have one ramp, or both of the ramps sort of run out into a neutral place where you can see whatever your opponent's making. Some of this stuff is great 1v1 advice, but you can always get away with some of this stuff in 2v2. Savagewood, again, half a shot, Ace King. He has 2 Robos, of course, and after seeing that many Hydras, he's definitely going to want to keep pumping Colossus. But the Protoss players should know that they're up against an air threat of some kind, and they really have to address that. Not dying to the Zerg is the main focus, I think, at this point in the game, though. Because if your opponent's going carriers, he's not going to have enough carriers to do anything. For a while, at least, when you see that many Phoenix, and they trade that many Phoenix. And they've been harassed to the extent that they have. Remember, harassment, it isn't just about killing workers or slowing someone's income at a certain time. It can actually slow the moments at which they can achieve certain critical masses, or max out. Maxing out is sort of the simplest example of it. If someone's heavily harassed, even if they macro perfectly and defend the harassment, the mining time that they lose and sort of the collateral damage that the build takes. I mean, no one's really going to take no damage to consistent 2v2 harass, but just for the sake of the example, you know. Great defense, even if you do it, harassment is still good. That's the point. And again, a very simple one. When I say these things, you know, I don't think that I'm moving the world. It's just, I know there are a lot of newer players that like to watch this channel, and little things like this can really help you improve. Warp Prism, it might actually meet its end here, as rocks are rarely knocked down on this map, and units in general don't ever really sit over here and Savage Wood had it on a move command, and it gets mowed down. But it serves as a warning. He actually knocked the freaking rocks down, and he's coming. Savage Wood is wheeling his army out here to try to react. He has 1-1-1. The Zerg player has 2-2. That's not the end of the world. It's not terrible. A couple good force fields could change things, as a lot of lings are shaved off here. For lucky. And once the Protoss player accumulates about 4 Colossus, Hydra Roach is preferable to Hydra Ling, but neither of which are that good. I really think you just have to slam a lot of lurkers down to do anything against this many Colossus. Or if you don't want to be stubborn, just go into Viper. Especially when your opponent is going for air, Vipers are incredibly powerful. Because if you don't want your opponent making, you know, Corruptors or Vikings or Void Rays, to just annihilate all your Vipers very quickly. So if your ally is going for an air composition, Vipers are even better. Corner bases have been set up for the red Protoss. He's mining gas pretty well. Take another drink there. Of course, this is an error. Well, if it didn't work the first time, try it again, as Hydra Ling is being thrown forward here with not enough lurkers. And it's not a good idea to do this when you're facing 2 Protoss players going for multiple robo play. And I guess the idea here is to try to snipe down all the Colossus, but there's plenty of support here, and the air has not hit critical mass. And you really need a mothership with this comp, makes it way worse to deal with. Very hard to deal with the mothership. I think it's really underrated. And the Protoss army, even without force fields, it looks like it might be able to push back. As Savage Wood throws a DT in, this is always a good move, is throw in a couple DTs in prolonged fights like this. People say StarCraft 2 fights are way too fast compared to Brood War fights, and while that might be true, in 2v2 you can have much more prolonged fights, and in general mixing in a DT when your opponent doesn't have detection is a great way to help hold it, especially if it's going to be an extended push. And we see this all the time with extended Warp Prism plays. Our hero unit of the game as it was. The air player had a DT in his natural, in his main. Spawn's army was threatening to press up. Savage Wood's army is pressing up. The Colossus run forward and do damage. That is what Colossus do. VenomousStare's YouTube channel. It's been a little bit of an odd cast, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And I hope you subscribe for more, despite my throat choking up at the last minute. Have a good one.